So recently I went back and played and reviewed the reboot of Need for Speed, which came out in 2016, and I wanted to see how the series had evolved since then. And that brings us to Need for Speed Heat, which was released in 2019. Now, this game was supposed to be a bit of a turning point, bringing together the street racing vibe that people loved from the older games while fixing a lot of the issues from the recent entries. And honestly, it does improve on quite a lot of things, but it's still not perfect. So let's have a look at the story. So the story in Need for Speed Heat takes place in a fictional city of Palm City, heavily inspired by Miami, which explains the bright neon lights, coastal roads, and the mix of daytime and nighttime racing culture. You play as a custom character trying to rise through the street racing scene, working alongside a small crew including Lucas, Anna and other racers. The story evolves around the two main worlds: daytime racing, legal, sanctioned events where you earn money, and then nighttime racing, which is the illegal street racing where you build reputation but also attract police attention. And there's where the main conflict comes in. There's a corrupt police task force led by Officer Shaw who is essentially hunting street racers, seizing their cars and using excessive force to shut down the scene. This creates a constant tension. You're not just trying to race to win, you're racing to survive. One of the more interesting parts of the story is how it tries to build stakes around the idea of cops confiscating cars. There's definitely potential here, especially with the idea of losing everything if you get caught, but it never fully commits to that narrative. It would have been fantastic if the story leaned harder into this recovering of the stolen cars. Just imagine missions where you track down the impounded vehicles, escape with maximum heat. That would have added some real intensity, and if they gave a big reward at the end of that, where either maybe you managed to keep the car or you got a massive lump sum of money, that'd have been fantastic. But instead, the story ends up feeling decent, but a little bit on the short side, lacking a strong final goal beyond just progressing through races. And the final race itself, in my opinion, is a little disappointing. That said, it's still a step up from the 2016 game. There's at least some structure here and you feel like you're part of a scene rather than just being dragged from race to race. Now, graphically for this game, well, this is where things get a little bit mixed in my opinion. At night, the game looks fantastic, just how it should do. Neon lights everywhere, wet roads reflecting city lights, and that proper street racing aesthetic. It absolutely nails that underground vibe, very similar to how the 2016 game did. But during the day, it's just a different story. The daytime visuals just feel a bit bland and a bit lifeless. The backdrop just lacks detail compared to it at night setting, and it just doesn't have that same personality. Which is interesting because the previous game actually looked better in some ways, especially with its constant night setting. I do believe that 26 game did look better than this. And for the map itself, well, it's a decent size, it has a good variety in roads and layout, but it just feels a little bit empty at times. Again, looking back and comparing it to that 26 game, that 2016 one was it felt like you were in a actual city that you were racing, and the outskirts of that city just felt like they were a bit more alive in terms of the roads, just felt a bit better, whereas this one just feels a bit generic and bland. And that's the key issue. It's not a bad map, it just doesn't stand out. It grows on you over time, but it's just not one of them iconic ones that you'll ever remember. Now, as for the gameplay and driving mechanics itself, well, this is where Need for Speed Heat makes some massive improvements. Compared to the 2016 game, the cars feel much better to drive, handling is much more responsive, and the balance between grip and drift is far more usable. Look, it's still an arcade style driving game, you're never going to get anything too realistic, but it absolutely nails that arcade style and just feels really good to just power drift a car around a corner, and you don't have to hit X, you can time it and set up how you want to do the handbrake and drift turns. It's really good how they built that in. Like I say, drift in particular feels real upgrade in this. It's more comfortable, controllable and consistent, and actually is viable in races, unlike in the last one where you just had to hit an handbrake turn and you just hit the corner immediately. This one you can really drift around it. You're no longer forced into weird builds where drifting is always faster either. There's more flexibility now, and especially there's this off-road scene that they created, which means that you can even build an off-road type of car and kind of lose the police that way or beat races that way. Some good variety that they've introduced, to be fair. And one of the best additions that they actually fetched in was the car rating system. So racers now require a certain rating to enter them. It forces you to progress or upgrade your car, and it stops you from just steamrolling everything early on. You have to actually hit that mark. Now look, you can still get away with being a little bit lower than that mark, but ultimately, if you're not there, you are going to probably struggle a little bit. It just gives the game a bit of structure which was missing before, and it gives you some kind of idea of how good your car actually has to be to enter that race, whereas beforehand you're kind of just guessing what it had to be. They've also massively improved the car customization. Now look, it was good in the previous Need for Speed title, but here it seems to have gone like an extra step. It's even better. There's so much more that you can do to the exterior of the car, so many more little bits that you can add. There's just a huge ton of options in that customization section, and even the performance section where you can swap out engines and change the parts there, and a lot of different bits that you can attach to stop police and make it harder for police to detect you, or anything to do with like the nighttime missions where you've got the police heat. That can kind of help. It's got loads and loads of customization, which is fantastic. It also has a much more variety in choice of cars, which is brilliant. It's just, yeah, really good improvement compared to the last game. You can also adjust your car just before the race, or you can swap out that car to a different one if it's like a different style of race that you're playing, which is really good. So yeah, fine-tuning all of your cars and your carriage, it makes it fantastic. And that being said as well, it doesn't seem like there's a limit in the garage either, so you can just buy all of the cars and do them all up, which is absolutely brilliant. And again, like I said, just a massive step up from that last Need for Speed. So let's have a look at the progression and economy of this game, because, well, the progression system is quite interesting, but ultimately I think it is on the flawed side. Because ultimately you've got two currencies in this game. You have money that you mainly earn from daytime races, and then you've got the reputation that, from my experience, you only really earn from the nighttime races. And money is fairly easy to earn, but everything is a lot more expensive than it was on the previous Need for Speed, which creates this weird balance in that you can upgrade your car really easily, but if you want to buy a new car or add more cars to your garage and get them upgraded as well, that takes a lot of time and a lot of grind of just doing races over and over again. And this actually made me do a bit of a challenge in this game, where I wanted to see if I could use the starter car and just play the game with that and complete it with that. And I actually did. I completed it with the basic BMW M3 that you're given right at the start. I just upgraded that all the way through and beyond the game, and I was able to compete in every single race and completed it just with one car only. But that kind of highlights a problem. You don't really need to explore the full car list, and it's a real shame because, like I said, the selection available is brilliant here, but unlocking them just takes a lot of grinding. A lot of them are just locked behind this progression wall. I personally would rather them reduce that progression wall. I mean, got to complete the game, I was level 30 or 31, and I still had cars yet to unlock. And I preferred it if I could unlock all the cars a lot earlier on, but the price tag on them was a lot more, and it made it a little bit harder to buy. So at least if I was grinding out races, I was doing it because I could buy the car and do it up. Not that I was grinding them out just to unlock it, to then grind them out, to then do it up and buy it. It's just, yeah, there's just a bit too much of a grind here. Now, in the previous Need for Speed game, the police system was pretty much horrific, and I highlighted how bad that was. You could have pretty much the worst car in the game and always outrun the police. It never felt like it was getting too difficult or too hard. But this is probably the most defining feature of this game, and it's also probably one of the most frustrating in some cases. At night, police are just extremely aggressive. You just do one race and your heat builds up so incredibly quickly that they're on top of you. Especially later on the game, you might find yourself just doing one race and jumping straight up to a heat of 2 rating. And escaping them is actually genuinely difficult in this game. Apart from a few bugs where you can basically go over a jump, and they just seem to not be able to go over jumps in this game, so they just go flying into the water. That's the only time you can tend to lose them pretty easy. But if you get up to the highest heat rating of 5, where you've got a chopper and a rhino, which is this big massive truck coming at you, it can get really hard. So it's almost like they've flipped the switch and gone too far the other way. But that being said, it creates some real tension in these games, because in the races there's just so much more at risk. If you get caught, you kind of lose everything from that session, so you've just got to be on your toes about it. But again, that also means that, you know, you're forced into realistically only doing 2 to 3 races at night before it just becomes way too risky to do. And especially if you've not got maybe the best car in the game. Like I said, I used the one right from the start, and although I managed to do it up and I was getting it up to the right recommended level for the races, it probably still wasn't enough to outrun like the best police cars on the game. So yeah, you're just constantly forced to return to safe houses, bank what you've done, go out and go again, which, like I say, it just kind of breaks that flow of gameplay, unfortunately. It would have been better, in my opinion, if you did a race and the police didn't see you on the race, or you didn't come across the police in the race, then you wouldn't generate any heat. But on this, it's kind of like, even if you get no police attention whatsoever and you complete a race, you immediately get heat on you. And I get it, you know, maybe someone from the public might have reported you, but yeah, I just think they could have been just a slight bit less, I don't know, aggressive with the police. And they've all got nitro as well and smash into you, and yeah, it becomes difficult. But that being said, it's still way better than the previous game. And the fact that they've now added a car health bar really adds to that tension in races, because if a police car smashes into you too much, or if you're smashing into walls or traffic too much, you can damage your car, and you're limited to the amount of repairs that you can do, and you've got to be able to get to these gas stations to actually repair your car. So it's again another really good mechanic they've put in there, and I actually am a massive fan of that. And then looking at the actual missions and race variety, well, this is where, again, like most Need for Speed games, it feels quite repetitive. And unfortunately, most racing games do have this issue. For me, though, the daytime races are just an absolute flop. There's just too many circuit races and not enough sprints. And I get it, the daytime races are meant to be these legit races where you're going around tracks that have been created, all barred off, no traffic, you know, people spectating you, so it's going to be more of a circuit style race. But I just find them so boring and repetitive, and I'd just prefer it so much more if it was just a sprint. There's only a couple in that daytime section, and them ones which are in there are actually pretty good, whereas the nighttime races have got all the sprints, so they just feel more exciting, especially because of the kind of risk around it with the heat system. You've got traffic everywhere, so you're just, you know, smashing into one car and wrecking your car could ruin your entire race. And yeah, it's just so much better than nighttime. The daytime is just really just disappointing. And yeah, that just leads to races feeling very similar when you're playing them, and just the progression becoming, again, just a lot of that grind. So even though the core gameplay is solid, just needs a little bit more variety in them races to freshen things up. I also think they could have done something quite unique with this game, with the fact that it had the daytime and the nighttime setting. I think it could have had some real good opportunity to add a path for your character to go down, where you either explore and do a lot more of the daytime races and become this kind of legit racer, making a name for yourself, and, you know, getting some kind of, you know, different reward or something if you prioritize the daytime. And then if you prioritize the nighttime and became almost like this outlaw, and you got like a bit of a reputation for being like the best illegal street racer, you know, just something like that, where it branched off and gave you these two opportunities. I think that's like something they've missed there that they could have gone down. Instead, you kind of made a name for yourself on both sides, and it just doesn't really make sense, to be honest, in my opinion. I think one or the other would have worked much better. I know most people would have chosen the night one, but it'd be nice to have the option to do one or the other. So look, ultimately, this Need for Speed game it's a good game, but it's just not a great one. It proves on a lot of things from the previous ones, such as the driving mechanics, customization, but it struggles with things like the map design, repetition again, and the progress balance for me is just kind of broken. It took me around 13 hours to complete the main story, and I really just focused on doing the main story and doing the bare minimum amount of races that I needed to do to progress onto the next level required. I think if you wanted to do a full completion, because there's a ton of hidden collectibles knocking about, jumps that you can do, they're actually really good, to be fair, that you can do these like little mini things during there which aren't actual races. But if you want to do everything, I think you're probably looking at around 25 to 30 hours for a full completion. So there's a decent amount of game time here. and the reviews on Steam at the minute currently sit very positive. Now, when this first came out, Metacritic gave it a score of 72, which is okay. It's not great, to be honest, but you can see people still love this game. Like I say, them reviews sitting very positive. It shows that they're liking it, and look, I enjoyed it. I did, and I gave it a thumb up. I thought it was a good game. I gave it a good rating on Steam. But for me, it's still not the perfect series game, or even like probably in my top 3 Need for Speed games. I enjoyed it. I just think because it's like the best Need for Speed game that's come out in a long time, people might be overhyping this a little bit more than it is. Like I say, it's a decent game, but it's not like the best game, in my opinion, that is anyway. And honestly, it's just one of those games where you do actually enjoy your time with it, but you just won't feel a huge urge to come back and replay this ever again. Still, for the price you can get it for now, I think it's absolutely worth checking out, especially if you are in Need for Speed games and you've never played this one. It is a decent little game. If you've liked this video, give it a like, and if you want to see more videos like this, consider subscribing, where I drop regular game reviews and retrospectives. Hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll catch you in the next one.